When you live all your life next to the ocean, you think you're invincible. Unfortunately for Nick Slater, even the most experienced surfers can fall prey to the great white shark. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. Nick Slater loved the ocean. It served as his haven, a place where he could unwind after a demanding day at the real estate office. His favorite spot was Greenmount Beach on the southern Gold Coast. With its consistent waves and picturesque surroundings, it's a surfer's paradise. Tuesdays like this one were Nick's favorite kind of Tuesdays because he got out of the office early and went surfing. He would often talk about how being out on the water gave him a sense of peace and how everything seemed to disappear when he rode a wave. He cherished surfing's challenge, excitement, and sense of community. On that fateful Tuesday, Nick finished his work early, eager to get out on the water. The waves were calling to him. As a seasoned surfer, Nick was 46 years old, aware of the dangers, but always mindful of the sea's strength. Nick caught a couple of good waves early on. He felt in tune with the water, with every movement of his body in harmony with the board beneath him. The worries of his everyday life melted away, replaced by the pure joy of surfing. As the afternoon wore on, Nick's confidence gained a huge boost. He was now ready for bigger waves. The 46-year-old man paddled out a bit further, where the waves were bigger and more powerful. The water was clear and inviting, with no sign of danger. Or so he thought, for underneath lurked a 15-foot-long great white shark, one of the ocean's greatest apex predators. As he stood up on his board, he felt a rush of adrenaline. These were the kind of moments he lived for. Growing up on the southern Gold Coast, he spent endless hours on sandy shores and in clear blue waters. Once he learned how to surf, no one could get him out of the water. Riding the waves, he felt right at home. That moment of pure serenity was suddenly shattered when a powerful force struck his board from underneath. Nick lost his balance and fell into the warm water. He saw his board flying through the air, then disappearing under the waves. The next moment, he felt a sharp, excruciating pain in his leg. The shark's serrated teeth sawed through Nick's leg with massive force. The animal shook its head continuously while it ripped skin and flesh, exposing bones. Despite the terror and pain, Nick's instincts as a surfer kicked in. He knew he had to get to the surface to get air. For a brief moment, he was able to escape and surface, struggling to breathe. His shouts for help were heard by beachgoers, who immediately ran toward the waves to save him. Before his rescuers reached the water, the shark pulled him under again. Struggling to stay conscious, Nick's vision became blurry. He could feel the shark's strong jaws crushing his leg and its teeth ripping through his flesh. With the last of his strength, he attempted to fight back, punching and kicking, but in vain. The shark was simply too strong, a bulldozer of an animal. The attack finished as quickly as it began. The splashes of water subsided, and the dark silhouette of the shark left the scene, returning to the shadows. Jade Parker, a fellow surfer who had been about to enter the water, saw Nick's board floating aimlessly, with Nick's body nearby, unmoving. A chill ran down his spine as he realized the gravity of this situation. Parker ran down the beach, dropped his board, and sort of trudged through the lineup to get to him. There was already a crowd of people pointing and yelling toward the water, trying to see what had happened. Jade swam as quickly as he could, shouting for help. 3 other surfers joined him. When they finally got to Nick, he had already passed out, and they saw his leg was a horrific scene of blood and ripped flesh. From his groin down to where his leg was supposed to be, it remained nothing but a gory scene. Together, they were able to pull him onto a surfboard, starting the difficult process of getting him to safety. As they finally reached the beach, a larger crowd had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Lifeguards and beachgoers rushed to help. The scene was chaotic, filled with urgent calls for assistance and the sound of sirens in the distance. Despite their best efforts, it was clear that Nick's injuries were too severe. He had lost a significant amount of blood, and his body was unresponsive. Glancing down at Nick's surfboard, Jade saw a big bite mark, a rough circle roughly the size of a basketball. Embedded in the fiberglass was a 1.6-inch tooth, unmistakably from a great white shark. The reality of the situation hit hard. Nick had been a victim of a great white shark attack. His chances of survival were slim at best. When paramedics arrived, they assumed control, but their options were limited. Nick's injuries were catastrophic, and he had already slipped away. In the frenzy of the moment, Jade and the other surfers thought Nick was still alive. To them, he was still breathing. In reality, Nick was already dead before they managed to reach him. A lonely and terrible death. The shark tooth that Jade found embedded in Nick's board was later analyzed. It was definitely a great white shark tooth. Great whites are the world's largest predatory fish. They get their name after their white underbellies, but their top sides can come in a variety of browns and grays. This stark contrast allows these types of sharks to blend in with their surroundings, and thanks to the immensely popular 1975 film, Jaws, which starred a massive great white, this species is one of the most recognized sharks on the planet. Great whites can rocket through the water at speeds approaching 35 miles per hour. This speed and a bite force of up to 1.8 metric tons allow the shark to quickly inflict massive trauma on their prey, disabling their target and thus protecting against a counterattack. The great white shark's infamous smile is made up of 7 rows of serrated 2.5-inch long teeth. While the animal possesses around 300 teeth in total, most aren't used to bite. Great white sharks have a bite more than 20 times stronger than a human, so you can only imagine the way Nick felt when that shark started to maul him. The pain is indescribable. Some victims don't even feel the pain. They simply succumb to the horrible death. Like Jade, a lot of surfers did not let the tragedy stop them. It's just a simple fact that you have to take that risk getting into the water, he said. If there are things that can help us not get killed in the water, I am all up for that, especially shark devices. After Nick passed away, the Gold Coast's reputation as having generally safe beaches was damaged, and conversations about how to better safeguard beachgoers without endangering marine life were sparked by the incident. Nick Slater's death was a real tragedy, especially knowing his bubbly personality and love for the ocean. Some people would say it's an unfair death, which is definitely true. However, you should always be prepared when going into a shark's territory. You never know if one day it will be your last swim ever. Allie Truwit was 22 years old. In May 2023, she had just graduated from Yale University with a medical degree and was enjoying some downtime. She kicked things off by running a marathon with her mom on Mother's Day. Then she headed for some real R&R. Her destination was the islands of Turks and Caicos, where she traveled with her college friend and teammate, Sophie Pilkington. The two of them were competitive swimmers, something that potentially saved their lives when disaster struck just days into their overseas adventure. Situated in the West Indies, the islands are postcard perfect, with white sandy beaches, turquoise waters, and a tropical climate. It was the perfect place to celebrate the end of university and was a break before Allie was due to start work at a consulting firm. But something was about to change her life forever. On the morning of May 24th, they took a small boat out for a snorkeling trip. The cool water engulfed them as they jumped in. They had been told that the area is safe from sharks. Swimming and snorkeling in the crystal clear waters are the most popular activities for visitors to the islands. The underwater scene was a stunning mix of brightly colored fish and corals. The water was so clear they could see the ocean floor below them. But there was something hidden from sight. It was a predator, always on the lookout for an easy meal, and it was heading directly for the two young women. After snorkeling for some time, they headed back to the boat. With their heads down in the water, still admiring the marine life below them, they suddenly felt a heavy bump. Not sure what it was at first, both friends looked around, and that's when they saw it. a terrifying image that sent shockwaves of adrenaline and fear through the body. The gray skin and white underbelly of a bull shark. Its small beady eyes were fixed on them, and its mouth was slightly open, displaying rows of razor-sharp teeth. It bashed into the girls, and they shoved it back, pushing it away on the snout. Panic gripped them. Coming face to face with such a marine predator in a vulnerable situation like that was everyone's worst nightmare. While trying to swim back to the boat, they repeatedly pushed the head of the shark away as it came at them again and again. Then, suddenly, it grabbed Allie's lower left leg. She felt the searing pain of the bite and the intense pressure. In an instant, it had bitten down on flesh and bone, and in yet another instant, it had sheared right through them. When the pressure had released and she looked down, the image of her foot missing was something that would stay with her forever. But instead of panicking, giving in, the two determined young swimmers decided to make a dash for the boat. It was 75 yards away, 1.5 lengths of an Olympic-sized swimming pool, but they were some of the strongest and fastest swimmers around, and fending off the shark with their bare hands wasn't working. The shark was still circling them. It was coming back for more. Allie was leaving a blood trail behind her. It was tantalizing the bull shark, one of the most aggressive species in the ocean. The thought of the shark following them was terrifying. Any second now, it could take another bite. Any second, the two women were anticipating another bump from the enormous animal, or to feel its powerful jaws clamp around them once more. The 75 yards felt like miles. Each second felt like a minute. They were racing through the water, but it felt agonizingly slow. Miraculously and against all odds, they made it to the boat and hurriedly pulled themselves up and out of the water before the shark could get them again. But the fight had only just begun. Allie was losing a lot of blood. Her leg had been severed just above the foot, and she had been running on adrenaline and determination alone. Now, she could feel herself fading. But Sophie wasn't going to let that happen. She had also graduated from medical school and quickly made a tourniquet and tied it tightly around Allie's leg to slow the bleeding. It was a decision that may have saved Allie's life. She then turned the boat back to shore and rushed Allie onto the beach. She was airlifted to a trauma hospital in Miami where they fought to stave off infection, and she underwent 2 surgeries. Then she was transferred to a hospital in New York, and on her 23rd birthday, Allie was taken in for yet another surgery. This time it was to amputate her leg below the knee. The trauma that Allie and her friend went through was enough to destroy them. Allie admits that there were a lot of dark days. She was in her prime, in peak physical condition with a potential swimming career in the cards. But that all had been taken away from her in a split second. Or had it? Not long after the attack, Allie stopped asking herself, "Why did this happen to me?" and began asking herself, "Why not throw everything into something?" She was grateful to be alive. She knew the outcome could have been very different, and she credits the actions of her friend and teammate Sophie and the medical response for that. The shark may have taken away her leg, but she was determined not to let it take away her love for the water. With her family by her side, Allie took her first tentative steps into waist-high water in her family's backyard pool. It was the first step not just on her road to recovery, but toward her new goal, to make it to the Paris Paralympics. By the time she had made her decision to compete in the Paralympics, Allie had little more than a year to prepare. Just 3.5 months after the attack, she was back in the swimming pool, competing again. At first, she had flashbacks and her leg was painful, but the more she worked at swimming competitively and training with her new coach, Jamie Barone, the more she found her love for swimming once again. It was a huge accomplishment in itself to get back in the pool after such an ordeal. There were times when she didn't think it was possible, but every length she swam of the pool felt like a victory for Allie. She had her friends, family, and former teammates all cheering her on. They were there every step of the way for her. They began to see glimpses of the old Allie again, the determined young woman who dominated the pool. But there was more to come. Allie made it into the Nationals in Florida, swimming backstroke and freestyle. She competed internationally in Portugal, the first time she had left the U.S. since the attack. And incredibly, she won the 100 backstroke, 400 free, and 100 free in the Paralympic trials, making it to the USA team for the 2024 Paralympics in Paris. She was now swimming with and against other Paralympic greats, a dream she never thought was possible just 1 year before. Her determination to not just fight off a shark and survive, but fight to make it to the competitive stage again, is a testament to her character and a role model for others to follow. 44-year-old Lauren Erickson Van Wart had graduated from the University of Pittsburgh in 2002 with a triple major in mathematics, English literature, and economics. Now she worked in Boston for Curriculum Associates. She was a math editor, providing resources to teachers, and had worked nearly 2 decades in educational publishing. But as well as her academic achievements, Lauren also loved the great outdoors. She was an avid runner, often venturing out with her husband of 13 years, Ernest, and their beloved dog. She was an adventurous young woman who was always keen to try new things. In 2023, Lauren and Ernest planned a vacation for the winter break. They were looking for some sunshine and warmth amid Boston's freezing winter months, something to break up the cold, dark days and nights. They opted for the Bahamas, just a short distance off the Florida coastline. It offered a tropical climate and white, flowery sand beaches over the festive period. But the Bahamas is also famed for something else. It's a hotspot for sharks. In fact, in 2011, the first shark sanctuary in the Atlantic Ocean was formed there. More than 40 species of shark frequent the waters, and this attracts nature enthusiasts and divers from all over the world. There are countless opportunities to dive with the marine predators in the pristine waters, and the country brings in more than $100 million from shark tourism. Some shark guides even go as far as to say that some areas within the Bahamas offer safe shark encounters. But, as everyone knows, sometimes people mixed with sharks spells disaster. It was the first full day of the couple's holiday. They had an entire week to look forward to. When they touched down on the island, they had made their way to the Sandals Royal Bahamian Resort on Cable Beach in western New Providence. It was a 5-star luxury resort, set on an immaculate white beach, surrounded by turquoise blue water. The hotel was picture perfect. Now, on the morning of December 4th, 2023, Lauren and Ernest decided to take advantage of some of the hotel's inclusive activities. They walked down the beach to where a line of paddleboards lay, propped up along the powdery sand. After signing a sheet of paper, the two dragged their boards into the water and climbed on. They pulled themselves across the bay and out toward the open sea. It was a cloudy day, but the sea was perfectly calm. All that was about to change. Unbeknownst to the couple, the further they paddled from the shore, the closer they were heading toward an enormous predator. It swam slowly yet deliberately below the surface. It was an opportunistic hunter and always on the lookout for an easy meal. With shark tourism so popular in the Bahamas, some experts say that the sharks have lost their natural fear of humans. Many attacks are unintentional, but some are clearly deliberate, and humans are singled out as food. In more recent years, the Bahamas has one of the highest rates of shark attacks in the world. When Lauren and Ernest reached about 3/4 of a mile from the shore, they decided to head back around. It was at that exact moment that the predator from beneath chose to strike. It torpedoed up through the water column, up toward the silhouetted outline of Lauren's paddleboard. With millions of years of hunting instinct packed into a powerful and muscular body, some species of shark are masters of surprise attacks. They knock into their prey, disorienting them, sometimes breaking bones and sending them flying through the air. Then, when the prey falls back into the water, they take a lethal bite. Ernest looked over his shoulder as an enormous gray head crashed through the sea surface directly underneath Lauren's paddleboard. it was the stuff of nightmares. Ernest saw Lauren smack back down into the water. A split second later, she bobbed back up, coughing and sputtering as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. It felt as though she had been hit by a truck, but there was more to come, and Ernest knew she was in trouble. Now, as he swiftly turned his paddleboard back around and began frantically paddling toward Lauren, he saw an enormous dark shadow coming up to the surface once more. He implored Lauren to pull herself out of the water, but in a matter of seconds, the shark had circled back around and darted at her from beneath. Lauren screamed when the shark wrapped its jaws around her side and clamped down with such ferocity that all Lauren could do was gasp. It crushed her torso, tearing through skin, muscle, and bone. Lauren was thrown from side to side as the shark shook its head. The couple's screams were heard by other holidaymakers on the beach. They looked out over the water. Terror gripped them as they realized what was happening. The water was bubbling and boiling. There was frantic splashing, and they saw the gray body of the shark arch out of the water as it rolled Lauren over. The lifeguard on duty at a nearby resort leapt to action. He powered toward the distressed couple, and without hesitating, he leaned over and pulled Lauren from the water. The shark was circling. It was coming back for more. But Lauren was pulled from the water, and seconds later, so was Ernest. When he looked down at his wife of 13 years, he could see that she was almost gone. She had lost so much blood in such a short space of time. She had a massive gash out of the right side of her body. Her right arm and hip were also severely lacerated. Ernest held on to her, trying to keep her awake, but she had already lost consciousness. When she stopped breathing, he began performing CPR. They made it to the beach where an ambulance was already waiting, and Lauren was rushed into it on a stretcher. But it was too late. She was gone. The attack had been too brutal and too devastating. There was nothing Ernest could have done. It was the most tragic end to their vacation imaginable. Something that they have been looking forward to for months had ended in disaster. When news broke of Lauren's passing, her friends, family, and colleagues were in shock. From the massive outpouring of grief, it was clear that Lauren meant so much to so many people. Even her neighbors in Lowell, where Lauren had lived for more than a decade, recalled how friendly and neighborly Lauren was. She would always wave and say hello when she walked her dog, a broad smile across her face. On Saturday, February 3, 2024, a memorial was held for Lauren in Massachusetts. The family requested that people attending wore a stylish hat in her honor, something Lauren was known for. Shark attacks are still incredibly rare, given how many people swim in the sea. Even in the Bahamas, where there is an abundance of sharks, relatively few incidents occur. In 2023, there were 14 confirmed shark-related fatalities in the entire world. Tragically, Lauren was one of them. Marlin Deere Wakeman has quite a story of how he survived his brush with death in one piece. As an experienced deckhand for his young age, 24 years old, Wakeman has seen almost everything that would instill a huge fear of the water in many people, but not in him. Growing up in Stuart, Florida, Marlin was used to the life of a fisherman since he was a little child. So it's not unusual that he followed in his father's footsteps and developed a passion for fishing and boating. He started his career at only 19 years old, but despite his young age, he managed to accumulate plenty of experience, so much so that he started to receive job offers from all over the country. As the son of a well-known captain, Marlin learned everything he knew from the best, showing what true passion for a job well done could look like. Since his very first job, he's been involved in fishing at a higher level than most people his age. After all, with his father's legacy preceding him, the young man had something to prove. He worked with some of the biggest names in the industry and developed a very good reputation because of this and because of his good work. A few weeks ago, as he was working on a job in the Bahamas, one of Marlin's biggest fears came true, something he hadn't experienced ever before during his career or his childhood. On his many trips to the Bahamas, working as a deckhand on a charter fishing boat, He heard terrifying stories about the docks where they usually would drop anchor, the Flying Fish Marina. This spot was famous for the impressive and scary number of Caribbean reef sharks that populated the waters and fed on carcasses. He used to joke with his friends that if you were to fall in the water there, you wouldn't even have 2 seconds to think about your next move. The Caribbean reef shark is found in the tropical waters of the western Atlantic Ocean, from Florida to Brazil, and is the most commonly encountered reef shark in the Caribbean Sea. With a robust, streamlined body typical of requiem sharks, this species is difficult to tell apart from other large members of its family. The Caribbean reef shark, which can reach a length of almost 10 feet, is a prominent predator in the reef ecosystem, consuming a diverse range of fish. For a shark that swims actively, they have been observed to lie still on the ocean floor or in caves. Typically timid or uninterested in humans, Caribbean reef sharks can turn aggressive when they sense food, and they can get big enough to pose a threat. According to Marlin, there are so many 5 to 7 foot sharks that usually crowd the marina that you can almost step on their heads and basically walk on water. Apparently, people would gather with buckets of fish in order to feed the sharks for entertainment purposes, which attracted more and more sharks to the area. Organized shark feeds have become a profitable ecotourism industry in which groups of reef sharks are attracted to divers using bait. This practice has drawn controversy in the Bahamas, as opponents argue that the sharks may learn to associate humans with food, increasing the chances of a shark attack, and that the removal of reef fish for bait may damage the local ecosystem. Therefore, danger was at an all-time high whenever they would dock there, and the captain used to warn his crew to be extremely cautious of every step they took. On that day, April 26, 2024, after arriving at the Flying Fish Marina, all the way from Stuart, Florida, Marlin was tasked with the tedious duty of bringing fishing gear back and forth from the dock to the boat. You know, being a fisherman has its ups and downs, its cool moments, and its most tedious jobs ever. So it wasn't a surprise to anyone that Marlin wanted to finish his task soon. Unfortunately, one wrong step would almost cost him his life. As he was returning to the boat to carry some more fishing gear, he made the rash decision to jump toward the edge of the boat, rather than carefully taking his time when stepping on the deck. As he tried to jump almost 3 feet, his miscalculations sent him straight into shark-infested low-tide waters. In a matter of seconds, more than 20 sharks surrounded him. The predators started swimming around him, excited that they were going to eat something else instead of fish carcasses. But Marlin, as soon as he hit the water, understood what was happening to him and managed to stay calm. He knew it was life or death, shark versus man. He knew he had to act fast. His captain's words echoed inside his head. He knew he hadn't been careful, and most importantly, he knew he didn't want to die. Wakeman swam upward toward the boat, but nothing could prepare him for what came next. As he hung on to the boat cockpit, a shark ferociously bit him on his knee and dragged his head underwater. Despite his mouth filling with water, the young man fought and resurfaced for just enough time to take a big breath before being pulled again by the powerful predator. Marlin continuously kicked the shark as much as he could, while also trying to keep his surroundings in check. Everywhere he looked, there was a shark, but this didn't make him lose his calm. Instead, he punched the shark's head with his hands as much as he could, while trying to shake his leg loose from the shark's jaws. As soon as the almost 7-foot shark loosened its tight grip, the 24-year-old resurfaced. He kept thinking, why don't I feel any pain? In reality, the adrenaline that was coursing through his body softened the shark's bite. Marlin only felt a lot of pressure, but as soon as the first shark retreated, a second one bit him on the shoulder. This time, it felt like a punch. Marlin's luck didn't give out, though. The second shark didn't seem to hold on to its victim's shoulder too much, and when the opportunity presented itself, the 24-year-old miraculously managed to pull himself up from the water onto the boat. With his left leg mauled and his shoulder pulsing with pain, Marlin dragged himself on the deck, while reality hit him more powerfully than ever. He assessed his injuries, which were not very pretty to look at. After a few minutes, pain slowly started to invade his body, and he let out a scream as blood began to flood from his knee. Now, after the calm had passed, the 24-year-old started yelling for help, desperate to survive. The boat's captain heard his screams and ran to him in a heartbeat. After seeing the blood that surrounded the young man, he sprung into action, applying a tourniquet and elevating his leg. Scrambling for a plan of how to transport his deckhand to a medical center, the pain was unimaginable and Marlin's body couldn't take it anymore, so he blacked out. Back home in Stuart, Florida, Marlin's father got a terrifying text, one every parent wouldn't want to receive. As soon as he found out about his son's injuries, he called his captain and asked him to organize a chartered plane for West Palm Beach. The next day, Marlin was transferred to St. Mary's Medical Center, where he received additional medical care. His doctors said it's a miracle he survived the horrible attack. It's not common for people who fall into shark-infested waters to come out of there alive with a shark bite that barely missed the femoral artery, and Marlin is well aware of his luck. His injuries were life-threatening, but the doctors believe he will make a full recovery, especially after some physical therapy. Despite his almost fatal encounter with death, the 24-year-old can't stay away from water for too long. He will, however, be more careful so as not to fall again into the jaws of a shark or two.